Started. It's 6 o'clock on the nose. We're going to start with Phyllis. Will be our first one tonight. So, Phyllis, if you wouldn't mind,
Okay,
hit a few of the highlights, and
yeah.
if we get any questions, we can go from there.
All right. Well, my priorities remain as they have for the last 11 years. That's kind of crazy. In year 12. Supporting external and internal communications as directed by the supervisor, including regular content for the website, producing news releases, supporting the column, any resident communications from all the various departments. I'm trying to work with everybody on that for consistency, and any special presentations as needed. Looking ahead, the 2020 comprehensive plan is going to be the big ticket item this year. So attending those meetings, keeping the communications flowing. And then the Energy Committee, Wellness Committee, I already mentioned the town departments. And I try to just always be listening to topics and hear what's going on, who's calling in for what reason, what the hot topics are, and then try and work with department heads to get the best tools set up to help minimize phone calls and increase customer service. I do not need any personnel or expenses or special support. And let's see, no training, and the other town departments that may require my support will again be the comprehensive plan group. The solar array we're looking forward to in the spring, and I think that that's going to be an opportunity to brand the whole DPW complex and the rain garden as a sustainable center. And that also rolls out to, we need to do some tidying up of the rain garden and some other things, but we can have a good time branding that. Wellness Committee and the Energy Committee, any projects that come up with those two. My accomplishments from 2017 are supporting communications all over the place. Mixed use district, we got that done right through the ordinance. The town safety manual was revised and pretty much rewrote that and restructured that document. And ongoing support of the moratorium right through all the current activities for the Pines, and all the events associated with the Energy Committee and recycling, clean energy communities. We started working on that. Wellness, planning and engineering, we work regularly together trying to put together reusable communication tools to residents for chronic topics like drainage and developer communications, that sort of thing. Same thing with DPW. We have our usual winter communications that we always prepare, and last year the special project was that smoke testing for the stormwater system, and the 2017 town calendar project. So that's my highlights.
Okay. Questions, comments for Phyllis?
Do you
anything more or less?
Just real quickly, Phyllis, do you see, the town website, I think, is very well done. I mean, it was given some accolades by the Democrat and Chronicle in the spring of 2017 under their I forget what Transparency in Government Initiative.
Sunshine.
Yeah, thank you. Sunshine Week, I think it was, is I think one of the best websites that provided information. And I know that the town takes the transparency part on the website very seriously. I think we do a very good job. And as always, we can probably do a little bit better and improve on that. Do you see what do you see as some of the improvements on that website moving forward that maybe we need to take a look at? Maybe some of the weaknesses, some of the vulnerabilities of that website, and how can we continually try to make it better than what it is? And I'll be honest, I mean, I've looked at some other town websites, and they're nowhere near as
Yeah,
sophisticated as ours.
Our strength is our content.
Right.
It's not the prettiest website, and it
Yep.
doesn't have maybe some of the visual pizzazz and moving things and intense video up front, but and it's also, we've made a Cadillac out of a Volkswagen.
Yeah.
I think that I've mentioned that before. The tool that we have is very basic, and PCTV's been able to manually improve it. It's like a kind of a Charlie Brown Christmas tree with lots of great ornaments that PCTV put together.
Yep. Yep.
So I think just what could we do better?
And I'm not saying that in a way of saying I know what we can do better, and I'm trying to put somebody on the spot. I'm just saying, I know that the town board and you and Dave Renner at PCTV, there's always new ideas. There's always new trends in governmental or municipal websites that other communities may be doing or trying, and just kind of be proactive.
Maybe
in
it's
those things.
my experience with it is sometimes I wish things were in different places. So you can always be more intuitive, especially following the hot topics. Like we have that the hot links over there,
Right.
Quick links. That when everything becomes important, that starts to lose its value. It's like, oh, put that in the quick links, and then that gets bogged down.
Yeah.
So I'd like to see, maybe better ways for people to get to the most important things in their mind. So you're always in the resident's mind.
Yeah.
And I personally, because of the Energy Committee, I know we can do a better job with all the sustainability information. You gotta know where you're going. It's not 2 clicks, it's more like 4 clicks. So that's been on my to-do list, and it kind of keeps traveling with me month to month on my monthly report. So I think I know we can do a better job with that. And maybe with the solar array, that will all get improved together.
Yeah. And I think that moving forward in 2018, and I agree with just about everything I agree with everything that you put on your list as far as priorities in 18. In my opinion, the 2 most critical topics or matters that we'll be focusing on is certainly the 2020 comprehensive plan. And I know that we as a town plan on rolling that out here in the near future, and keeping the community as updated as we can, and the website will be a big part of that. But also at the same time, the Shadow Pines purchase that's going on right now is another critical matter that needs the same kind of attention. In many ways it is getting a lot of attention on the website, because it is in that quick links or important links, with the shadows linked there.
They're both complicated.
They are, there's no doubt
about it. They've got a lot of
it.
nuance, and teasing that out and getting things in front of people in the right way in multiple places is something I think we've been very mindful about, and trying. Our conversations are always, what are the facts, and what do people want to know, and how do they want to know it? Where are they going to be looking for it?
Right.
Is it strictly down to PCTV that does the Twitter and the Facebook?
They do social.
Yeah.
So often,
But some that's your writing.
yeah. So once I publish it, then it goes to them, and then they get it out on all the social. So Tony and I write and publish, and then they take it the rest of the way.
So I would just ask that, from my perspective, I'm only one of 5, but that you and your team, all of this stuff is important, but I think as far as the community is concerned, in my opinion, there's 2, subjects that are probably 1 and 2, or, depending on how you want to categorize them, and just keep that in mind when you're focusing your energies and your responsibilities and your workload on, what are the big issues going on in 2018 moving forward, and just prioritize your time and work accordingly. So, thank you.
Got it. Thank you.
I have a question, Phyllis. You mentioned the sort of Charlie Brown analogy with the tree. So, and this may be a broader conversation with PCTV during their goals and priorities, but what is the plan? I mean, I would think that we are starting to explore what is next as far as the web platform, the online presence, how to better not only engage the public, but, you know, sort of align social media to an online platform through the website. I mean, if at some point either what we have is no longer going to be able to hang another ornament, or it could crash even sooner. So my question is, I mean, what's the strategic plan to find a platform that is maybe more interactive or user-friendly? Because I think the website has a lot of content, but I think you go there and trying to figure out where you go next is very problematic at times. So, I mean, is there some internal conversations about maybe trying new web browsers? I mean, if there's a cost associated, there's a cost probably associated. I mean, what's the plan?
Well, I'd say that is a PCTV conversation.
Okay. All right.
I'm a contributor and an operator of it, but in terms of the tool that we use is not, it's an older tool. And the interacting with social, as I understand it, isn't really a burden on our website because it's all separate. All we do is link people to it. It's a launch point. So our website's more of a portal, and I don't think it's a hardship to support social at all. Just like, you know, as individuals and organizations have their social media, they may not even have a robust website.
Well, they're listening, so that'll give them some idea of what I'm going to ask them when they come up here.
But yeah, I maybe you're going to see that in their
I think the
plans.
challenge is that we have so much content, and we have, you know, certainly engaged, informed, and intelligent residents who, you know, want to research things, but we've moved technologically in society to faster. Give me sound bites fast. You know, why wasn't that on Twitter? Why didn't I see that on Facebook? So I think that's the challenge collectively, I think, as a communications team, and for us too, I think, to push the envelope and really perhaps, you know, eliminate the middleman sometimes, you know, where you're drafting some information and then it's going, you know, there's that lag of time where people are, you know, they want it quicker. And I think it's a challenge as to how to accomplish that with the amount of information we have.
The weekly things like Supervisor's column, that, you know, that goes out and there's a method to it. If we have something big and breaking, they know it's coming. You know, we work, and I'll give a heads up saying, I'm about, you know, in the next hour or two, this is coming, so please be ready, and then it goes out. So, but I mean, it's teamwork.
Yeah.
It's just, it's easy to keep in touch because there's just 3 or 4 of
There's
us.
so much content. It's not like we have one product we're selling that all we've got to worry about is marketing that product. That's, you know, we do, but.
Okay. Other questions, comments for Phyllis? All right, Phyllis, thank you.
All right, thank you.
We'll pick up where we
Have a
left
good
off
night.
here tomorrow morning
Good
and continue the good fight. All right, thank you. We will next move into DPW and Mr. Tate, snowman extraordinaire.
What kind of snow are we going to get
Yeah,
this
what's
weekend?
your? I was
I'm
asking
hearing
the same
everything under the
question.
sun. I've got an airport supervisor that's telling me we're going to get 2 feet of snow over the weekend.
If it were up to me, we would get none.
That's a good answer.
I'm hoping
But
for-
realistically,
Yeah, I'm hoping it's on the lower side.
Yeah, enough to sled
I was
though.
gonna ask
It's
you
gotta
the
be
same
enough
That's
to
a pretty
sled.
safe.
Or if we're even gonna get it, I'd rather
So-
get it all at once, not
So basically, you're
Spread it out.
refusing to answer my question.
Yeah, I think
Call them Punxsutawney Phil.
Yeah, I
There's the
have no
fifth
idea.
Prognosticate the
I just hope it comes all at once, not spread out over days and days.
Right.
I think it's going to be Friday night and the Saturday.
But you're ready for it, right?
I got a mailbox that's waiting.
so before Eric jumps in, I will say that for the last 10 or 12 days, DPW on a whole bunch of fronts, between snow, cold weather, the use of salt. I think we're up over 5,800 ton of salt that we've used this year. Last year, I think we were at about 7,300 or thereabouts for the total year. And we got a couple more months left.
If that.
We're gonna order a couple hundred ton more of sand because we blew through the 500 ton that we already had. And our mechanics have been doing some yeoman duty, patching and fixing various things. So
As well as driving.
great, as well as driving. That's right. So thank you, Eric, to you and your team.
The exoskeleton.
So, starting 2018, our top priorities and goals are, not only to maintain our existing infrastructure, but also continue to provide the necessary services to the residents, as we have been doing. As far as employee and leadership development, we're continuing to kind of work, having both the foreman as well as the leadership work with each individual employee to try to come up with different ideas and opportunities for them to improve, grow, and succeed in an effort to better the overall department. The improved communications, we would like to continue the suggestion box program that was set up by Tony and Tracy to kind of help address employee concerns. We've been trying to be a little more transparent with all of the guys, sharing our kind of monthly data, whether it be the salt use, overtime, as well as kind of thanking them for what they've been doing and keeping them in the loop on the budget. We're trying to continue doing job safety reviews. One of the ways we're implementing that is we've created a daily job briefing sheet for the guys to discuss before they even leave the garage, somewhat similar to a toolbox talk. The guys can go through beforehand as a crew and then implement and kind of review while on site as well. I'm continuing to talk to them each morning to kind of discuss what the day may bring. As far as safety and attendance, both myself and Joe Perkins, the Deputy Director, are continuing to attend and participate in the town-wide safety committee meetings, as well as holding our own, just DPW only safety meetings with various representation from each of the individual groups and departments. We'll also be continuing to track our lost time days. We're currently at 10. As far as performance objectives, we, as I said, we'd like to continue to kind of maintain everything we have, provide all of the necessary services, stay in compliance with all of the mandated regulations, as well as look for opportunities to bring in revenue and maybe even increase from what we did in 17 through not only the state but also the county, Penfield School District, and even try to amend our relationship with MCC. As far as personnel, we'll continue to utilize the employees that we have at different times of the year to help absorb the peak workloads. We will bring in some seasonal help and replace existing employees as needed. I know about a week or two ago you guys had all voted on about 7 or 8 different resolutions for equipment, so we're working on getting all of that. There's a few more to come, but in addition, as far as expense and capital funding, we'll continue to look at the DPW garage feasibility study, as well as work with the grant money that we were provided for the 60 by 100 foot pole barn and try to determine the best location on site for that. We've got a few bids going on right now, one for a portion of the community center roof replacement, as well as 2 more HVAC units, if not possibly a third. if money allows. We'll add more security cameras as we did kind of implementing the new system this past year to provide better coverage around the town. We are going to be looking at renovating and upgrading both the Empire 1 and 2 pump stations as they're kind of nearing the end of their life, and as we've taken on a third on there to better increase the efficiency of that overall system. To continue with the pump station upgrades, we have chose 2 more, being 5 Mile Line South as well as Jackson Road, to replace so that they're running more efficient. Hoping to mill and pave the remaining portion of Parkview Drive neighborhood and be able to get out of there, as well as continue to chip seal approximately 13 miles of various town roads as we do every year. For ongoing and specialized training and the conferences that we're hoping to attend this year, certainly going to be looking to continue to work with the Cornell Cooperative Extension for pesticide management, as well as some of their highway superintendent courses in schools. To have our animal control and security guard trainings. May look into some heavy equipment training and the dig safe operator training for some of our employees and laborers, and do the yearly pesticide and playground equipment inspections for our parks guys. I think that's most of it.
I don't see the open space property that I'm always bugging you about on Plank and 250. You can put
The
parking
Amish
lot.
property,
Yeah. So we're gonna put the parking lot, take some trees out.
Yep,
Rotary's coming in to help.
we are working on that. Depending on the weather, we're actually trying to maybe get to that next week, depending on how much snow actually dumps this weekend.
It's ambitious. You just
Yeah,
had that
that we've
conversation
been-
about snow. And
Yep,
Yeah.
it's been a little crazy just trying to get equipment back up and running throughout this winter. So I was hoping that we'd have a midwinter break and be able to
so you're
get
thinking
to
that
it.
was before this? That's why it's not on?
I thought of it after I had sent
Okay.
this in.
Okay. Thanks.
We still may have a midwinter break. We're just not there yet.
I'm hoping.
We're still very early in the
This isn't
winter.
Yeah, today, tomorrow, and Friday morning is
Yeah.
We're only 3 weeks in the winter, Eric.
Yeah,
Okay. Not to
He's
burst your
aware of
bubble.
that.
I just want
I know.
So yeah, so that Eric and I and Joe and Tim have talked about the Amish property. So the sign is made for that. We've had that, and is soon. We ended up with a few more projects that ended up bringing us in some additional revenue, and so that kind of took priority. And
we have staked it out, surveyed it, staked it out, but we've got posts out there marking all of the corners. I know there's some ribbon tied on some of the trees for which ones the guys need to actually go and cut down. Just haven't had a chance to physically get over there.
And one of the other factors we wanted to wait for the colder weather
Yep.
is because there's so much poison ivy and poison oak
Right,
there,
I heard that.
Yep.
and
You can still get it though.
you
Yeah.
you
It
can.
is, but we're hoping the guys are bundled up a little bit more and covered.
I hear you.
Long sleeves.
Okay. All right, thanks.
Other questions for Eric? I'll just say Eric has done a great job. Both he and Joe Perkins and their team have accomplished quite a bit, and just wanted to recognize Eric. He spends a lot of time here, and I happen to see him at different times of the day and night. So, thank you for your efforts and that of your teams. Okay, great.
Tony,
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, it goes without saying that the crews are doing a great job in some less than ideal conditions. So, again, thank you for your efforts with that. You're probably already looking into this, but I just wanted to throw out there real quickly, supposedly in the next couple weeks, there's going to be some big national infrastructure announcement by the president. dealing with roads and bridges and, you know, infrastructure within the United States. I don't know how much of that, you know, trickles down to a town level, but I would just ask that once that announcement is made and what the details are, that, you know, you look at it from how can the town benefit from this, whether new equipment or money to repair more roads or whatever it is. I'm sure the association, you know, that we're members of, the town association, will probably have some suggestions, but just, you know, spend some time digging into that with your team and see how we can try to get out front in applications and whatever competitions that may be, you know, required and stuff like that, to try to see if we can secure any kind of funding for public works equipment, whatever it might be, or, you know, funding to repair and improve more roads.
Yep, I know I'm actually working with Mark right now, as well as Monroe County, to submit for a pedestrian safety action plan
Yeah.
grant to obtain money for uncontrolled crosswalks.
Yep.
If you're around town, there's a $250,000 minimum dollar amount to be able to be considered for it. So we're working with the Monroe County Town Highway Superintendent Association to have all towns compile together with the county to make sure that we, you know, far exceed that dollar amount and are considered for that grant.
Great. Great.
Okay, great. Thanks, Eric. Appreciate it. Move on to planning and engineering. So whichever one you want to tee up first there, Mr. Valentine.
I got planning on top. I was just going to do a quick rundown of recap of 2017 before I jump into the 2018 goals. Had a busy year in planning. We had 49 applications between public hearing work session items. Obviously, lots of assistance with the town board as well, including easement, sidewalk waivers, hold harmless agreements, grade and fill permits. Planning department handles all of the PRC process, distributing all that coordination with developers and applicants. On the GIS side of things, we had lots of updates to sidewalk plow routes, working with DPW, sidewalk maps, new road maps, storm and sanitary sewer mapping, school district boundaries, subdivisions. We've had over 100 map updates throughout the year on that end. We filed 69 easements, including the whole harmless agreements, deeds that were created in-house and sent out. We launched the public viewer, was our web viewer we used internally that had crashed several years ago. We got private side up on the staff side, and we got the public side up this year, and seems to have been well received and get a lot of you know, developers looking at that, residents looking at that for what their zoning is on their property, and we're even working with general code on some updates to that as well. Obviously working with the, you know, the clerk's office on numerous FOIA requests. So on the 2018 priorities and goals, obviously the comprehensive plan will be a major effort of us to get that up and going, kicking off this year and then working through to the 2020 on that. We'll be looking at some education efforts. Jim, Zach, and I have already been talking about, you know, once we're ready to roll out with that, the education of the committee members, getting them up to speed, talking about what zoning is and drainage and, you know, some basic ground rule type things to get started on that. Then into mixed use, obviously this board is well aware of rezoning of the 360 acres along 250. We already have one applicant that's coming in. We had conversations with them at PRC today on possibly looking at a March application for that. So that's the first one in, and we've heard rumblings of others, so that'll be new for a new zoning district for the town, as well as staff members to work through those process. The Shadow Pines, obviously that'll intensify this year as you know, we move ahead on that, and planning department as well as engineering will provide whatever staff support is necessary. We've been working through this year with CNS and providing support to them, working with BME and surveyors right now, providing them deeds and mapping to do some boundary stuff on that property as well. Continued support of the town boards. The planning department supports, obviously, town board, planning board, conservation board, the PRC as well as the Technology Committee. We'll continue, as we always have, training for board members, including the Planning Board and the Conservation Board, make sure they get their minimum hours of training. Often that's done within the house, and training for them, or as well make opportunities for them to attend county-run sessions. Continue training for ourselves, looking at whether attending EPA training classes, GIS conferences, other planning conferences, New York State Upstate Planning annuals in the area. Going into personnel, no proposed changes to current staffing, no additional requests for expenses and capital funding, nothing for specialized computer training on that. Other training, I kind of ran through what the planning department is, the Planning Board and Conservation Board. I said as we either provide training for them or make stuff available for going to the county facilities. And then major projects, again, the comprehensive plan, the design criteria, we are still working on that. We're now kind of working on low pressure sewers, incorporating that in a sustainability code. We've been talking about that, working with the Energy and Environmental Advisory Committee, and have shared that with them to get their input. And then I like to just add in there, we always keep implementation of the past plans that we've done, and recognizing the sidewalk policy, the trail master plan that was done, the bike facilities plan. Make sure we keep those front and center as we review applications and have comments in that we kind of reflect on the past of good work that we've done before.
So a couple of things, Mark, on as we take a look at the design criteria changes and updates. You got a kind of a projection, ideally, when you'd like to bring that in for ultimately
Yeah, I'd like
reviewing.
to do an early spring sit down with the board, just so we can roll that out into 2018. We've worked through it, and then as you do in any project, you keep adding on more and you take on a little bit more. I said the low pressure sewers has kind of become more of an industry standard, so we're looking to make sure we get some criteria around that, as well as sustainability. We've had more interest in solar, wind, geothermal. So again, we want to make sure we kind of get that in if we're going to do a major update. So we're trying to get this stuff done, but then we keep coming up with other stuff to put into there. But like to get all that stuff together, take the opportunity of winter. Hopefully, we're a little quieter on outside inspections and everything else. We can utilize some of that time to get that wrapped up. And then as we did with the general code updates, sit with the board, work through, here's our proposed changes, here's what we're looking to update, and then obviously make sure the board's comfortable before we put that out for public comment and public hearing, and then hopefully ultimate adoption.
Okay. All right. Good. Questions on the planning side? All right. We'll move on to the engineering side of things.
Again, kind of a recap of 2017. Again, a busy year. We had 42 active construction sites we were checking on a weekly basis, which included reviews of all the stormwater plans, SWIPs for that. That added up to 682 weekly inspection reports that we got. All construction sites that are over an acre are required to send in their weekly reports to us. If they open up more than 5 acres, they're required to send in 2 a week. So obviously that's an email in, but that's a lot for us to go through and then make sure that they're in compliance with that. Some of the major projects for the year, we worked with Eric and his team on some new parking lot designs for Greenwood Park. We're working on some into permitting for LaSalle's Landing for some improvements down at the bay. Working on the Amish property, we've got designs done and DOT permits for the Amish property. Eric's team already implemented the retrofit of the tollwood outlet structure. So we had an issue with a pipe that rotted out there, so we redesigned that structure, brought it in so it's not in the middle of the pond. And Eric and his team have already had that installed and implemented.
Anybody go on the pond?
We sent the intern in the pond. We gave him hip waders, but he went out there to do a little bit of survey work.
Maybe one person fall in with his fishing pole.
We did some design for,
Didn't Eric fall into something?
I understand he's had his boots wet a few times this year.
we've done some design for Woody Lane storm sewer system that'll be coming out this year, as well as some improvements on Bronston Drive. We designed, had permitted, and inspected over 2,400 lineal feet of sidewalk installed along 250 and Empire Boulevard. We put out traffic counters 26 times this past year, continually trying to gather data for the Transportation Committee and other staff. Finalizing Willow Pond and the grant. We keep thinking we're done, and there's another door that you got to go through, but we continue to chase that down and get some money back on that. So that's kind of the 2017 wrap up, and unless there's questions, I'll jump into the 2018. Again, no particular order, but stormwater phase 2 compliance continues to be a huge time task of us. Keeping up with weekly inspections, making sure we're meeting the minimum measures. We have to do our annual report of how many, and again, working with Eric and his team, how many miles of road did we sweep, how many acres of parking lot did we sweep, how much catch basins did we clean, how many miles of sewer did we flush, how many pamphlets did we hand out, how many education opportunities did we have, how many stormwater permits did we review. We got to compile all this in the April timeframe, send it into the DEC every year, as well as keeping up with the weekly construction inspections on that. Looking ahead at drainage projects, Allen's Creek. We're well aware of the Allen's Creek project, working with Barton LaJudas on that, but we'll be providing support to them. Bronston Drive, we've got some erosion mitigation. We're working to get things permitted and get some additional armoring in there. We're continuing the watershed committee on looking at our ponds and doing treatment of those. Floodplain management, engineering recently took that over with Harold's retirement. So all the flood mapping and making sure we're in compliance with floodplain regulations, excuse me, that's now in the engineering department. We continually work on obtaining the permitting for the creek and stream cleaning. I see the DPW implements it, work on the front end doing the design, and then work with them out in the field, as well as keeping up with our ponds, cleaning, keeping those maintained. On the sanitary sewer side, working with the town of Webster, they've had or will have some upgrades they need to their sewer treatment plant, so we're trying to keep in communication with Webster to see what additional capacity they have, what impact that has on us. So we're keeping communication open with them. As I spoke about with the design criteria, working on the details and specifications for low pressure sewers. The annual sidewalk program, typically we sit down in March, April with the board. We do have a few rollovers already from last year. We're already working on Empire Boulevard. We have a grant for a portion of that. Route 250, making that final connection in front of what was Hidden Hollow. I don't know the official name of it now, but coming up and making that final connection there. And then on Atlantic Avenue, that was supposed to be on this year's budget, but just due to costs and everything else, that one didn't make it into this year, so that's roll over into next year. But to continue that connection, as we've seen Windsor Ridge coming down the road, we're trying to come the other way, and hopefully at some point we can make those meet together. Collecting GPS data and updating our infrastructure. This year we did purchase a new GPS unit that is more accurate than what we had. We've mapped the vast majority of the town with either aerial photos or other stuff. We need to now refine that. I want to get rims and inverts, and so we have basic not real-time data, but you have a real model of what we have out there. That way we can analyze our storm and sanitary system, see where we have areas of deficiencies, areas if we do have flooding or ponding, maybe something's undersized or not. So we'll use the GPS to, one, refine our mapping, know where our infrastructure is, which helps us in DPW, out in the field, but also to help, do some analysis of, do we have capacity issues or concerns with that. GIS services will continue on. We keep mapping all of our easements. So on the staff side of it, we can click on a property, see the easement, it pulls up the actual document. So we have all the information on that, as well as keeping up with adding in new subdivisions, new roads, new infrastructure that's added, new utilities. In-house design, as I kind of ran through in 2017, we've been trying to keep more of the design projects in-house. We've got staff on board that has design experience. So we'd like to keep more of that in, with some cost savings to the public and the residents, is the more we can keep it on ourselves. We'll continue to provide support to the Town Board, Planning Board, Transportation Committee, Watershed Committee, Energy Advisory. No requested changes in personnel or expenses. And then specialized computer support, there's nothing specific requested in that. We'll continue to work through the assessor's office who handles our IT for anything on that. Education, as far as keeping my license current, there's professional development hours. I need to keep up with those in order to keep that current every 3 years. Then obviously we look to keep up on training on GIS conferences, floodplain management, since that's new to our department, to keep our skills up on that, as well as any inspection training, as far as there's a 4-hour course every 3 years you need to take in order to keep up standards on field inspections. And then other departments kind of work with a little bit of everybody and support other departments as needed.
Questions, comments from Mark?
Well, it sounds like you continue to utilize interns. You mentioned intern earlier, so that'll be throughout the year you have a use for?
We typically just have one in the summertime. We open it up every year, either RIT or Clarkson or whoever has. We do interview candidates, and it's worked out well for us. I think they've provided an extra set of hands in the summers. We're putting out traffic counters, as well as helping out with on-site inspections, but we also get them into design as well. So I think it's been a good give and take, that obviously we benefit from having them and some additional support, but also give back to them to kind of show what it is to work in a municipal environment and be part of the town and everything else. So typically it's a May to late August, September time frame when they're on their summer break is the time that we typically have them in.
I will say that Mark's team is pretty diverse in a lot of things. I mean, the MS4 regulations have been a huge commitment, and at one point or another, I think all of your team has touched it in some way, shape, or form. I mean, primarily the intern and Mike O'Connor and Sarah, but I know that Zach and Doug, it's a pretty diverse group up there that kind of rallies to get things done. So
And we've done some cross-training between departments. I mean, I spoke about them separately, but we act kind of as one department. And, I think it helps. Everybody knows a little bit about everything on both sides, and it allows us some flexibility if there's an ebb and flow of workflow to keep everybody busy, as well as keep up a level of interest as new stuff comes out.
variety of job too, so it helps break things up. So one question: have you gotten over the fact that we plunked Tate from the operation and moved him into DPW?
A little bit. We're getting there.
All right, we're working through that. All right.
Helping ways to
Very capable.
Other questions, comments for Mark? They certainly have got their. I sit with Mark and go through updates, and his team is involved in a lot of things in one way, shape, or form. So, all right, Mark. Thanks as always. Thank you to you and your team.
Thank you.
All right, saving last but certainly not least, I wanted to make sure that last donor of the day kind of settled in and got his energy level up.
Fall asleep.
Mr. Costello, Development Services.
Yeah, 45 seconds, go.
I can do it. I'm not going to bore you with the details of the 2017, except for a couple that I'm particularly pleased with. One was facilitating the new location for the Mary Cariola Center over at 1146 State Road. That property was problematic for us for several years. It was part of a 278 development, and everybody wanted to put apartments and everything else on there. Tony and I had met with Mary Cariola early on and offered to help them find a location. And that immediately came to mind, and luckily for all of us, it came to fruition, and I'm very pleased about that. It's a great location for that site.
Looks great so far.
Yeah, it's going to be beautiful when they get done. The next part of that now is to figure out what we're going to do with the old Mary Carey Center, because that's got some issues that have to be worked out. I worked with the staff, the planning staff, the building department staff, and Tom Goodwin at Monroe County Planning and Economic Development. This is something we want to do for years and years, and that was to create an intermunicipal agreement, which you approved with the county legislature, to allow us to filter out several applications that would normally have to be sent to the county for review. Going through that list with staff and with county planning, we determined that we would probably knock off about 50% of the things we're on that we've been doing prior to that. That saves an awful lot of money and time in terms of us preparing documentation and sending them off to the county or having to deliver them personally to the county, which Doug has been doing. So that's worked out very well, and I think that'll be a big benefit to the staff over the next several years. The last thing was working with the ZBA for the last several months, and part of that being working with Ann Buck and the board itself to get the board computers and get them online the way the planning board has been. That's going to save time additionally if we're not having to mail things out or drop things off to somebody's house to get them their drops for the meetings. So that was a big benefit, I think, for everybody.
Who took your job?
Well, that's part of my ongoing.
Jumping ahead.
So those were the big
Probably his
three
first
things.
goal of the year.
You know, you all had participated in most of my processes here because they were all approval processes that you went through with me, so I'm not going to belabor that issue. Getting into 2018, like Eric, after I wrote this and sent it to you, I started thinking of other things that needed to be done, so I'm going to incorporate them and we'll clean that up for you later on. But again, the mixed-use district now being created, as Mark indicated, we're working together to review new plans that have just come in. We are anticipating many more plans. We've talked to several people, and there are a lot of interested developers coming in on those sites now, so we will probably be very, very busy over the next year or two with that. Again, Shadow Pines, we'll be working with you to do whatever we need to do to support you to get to where you need to be with Shadow Pines. And once we figure out what has to be done there, that'll be ongoing with us, I'm sure. We've done a recent inventory of commercial structures within the town that are vacant, and I'm working with property developers to get those filled or either eliminated and redeveloped. That'll be an ongoing process throughout the year and probably for the next several years. The comp plan, as you noted earlier, that's the primary goal at this point in time. We'll be working with the planning department and with Phyllis to get that coordinated and launched for the year. And the big thing now for me right now is supporting Andy is Linda Ast, who's taking that spot with the zoning board. Andy Sevegas is going to do that. He already had his first meeting the other night. I'll be, working with him just to make sure he's at a comfort level that he's happy with. We've been going from the very beginning of how you set up an agenda to the point of how you write resolutions, and he's done a great job. And we're in the process now of refining resolutions that he's prepared. So we'll probably be doing that for the next several months until he's really comfortable about that process. Personnel, there's no additional personnel needed, no additional expenses or capital funding anticipated. Computer training is ongoing here all the time, so anything that comes up, we'll participate in that. No specialized training that I'm aware of. Any conferences would be in-house or webinars or something of that nature. There's no intent to leave the town of Penfield unless I have to go downtown for something, for seminars or conferences. Again, talking about interfacing with other departments, the planning board. Actually, this is just generalized stuff. I mean, we interface every minute of every day together on different projects. We're usually working together on everything, so the big one will be the mixed use coming up now. I work with Phyllis an awful lot. She's always asking for information, and certainly when she's putting things together for Tony's column and that kind of thing, we'll work together to get that information out to her. I work with Sabrina a lot and Chris Bilo on different projects where they're looking for support from commercial users for whatever project they may have, and I hook them up with them. And the building department's ongoing. A lot of it's code compliance and giving them direction as to what needs to be done on some issues that they're not aware of. It's a young group up there. They're a really good group, but they don't have any history, and if one person asked me one more time, what happened with this property before I was born, I'm going to strangle them. But it's good to be
Well,
working with them.
you're also the historian, really, of
Yeah.
all things.
Yeah, and it's nice. I mean, that was one of the nice things that I really enjoy working with these kids. We are very blessed. We are very lucky to have kids that are willing to give it up the way these guys do, and it's a pleasure working with them. It really is.
Good.
So I think Penfield's in really good hands over the next several years with these guys. And that's pretty much it. I will continue to obviously work as the clerk to the Historic Preservation Board.
Because you love that.
I do. I enjoy it very much. That is a great board to work with. I've had numerous compliments from people who've worked with that board. They have helped them save money, do things that were cost effective, and a lot of compliments for that board. And I give them all the kudos in the world. And they are a good complementary group of people. They all get along together really well. And it's a real pleasure doing it. So.
Great. Questions for Kaz? I'd just like to underscore, because I think he kind of glossed over it, as Harold announced his intentions to retire and kind of back away from the Zoning Board of Appeals, we really found ourselves in a bit of a bind, and I went to Kaz and asked Kaz if he would pinch hit, which he happily said that he would do that, and so I think that really helped bridge the gap. And now working with Andy, I think giving Andy a different perspective, going from code enforcement to working with building and the codes and the zoning board seems to make some good business sense. And Kaz, I just want to say thank you for bridging that gap, and you had the historic knowledge that you were able to step in and kind of make that happen and keep things running smoothly.
Well, I want to thank you, and I want to thank the board also. Very kind words the other night from both Paula and Andy, and I really appreciate it. I really do.
Okay. Anything else? All right, we've got about 7 minutes before the work session starts, so we'll give folks a chance to kind of get ready, and then we'll meet and greet our audience, and we'll get underway. Time just rolled 7 p.m. So we'll call the meeting to order, January 10, 2018, and we'll let the minutes reflect that all of the board members are here this evening, as well as a number of staff members and a number of distinguished audience that we'll get to here very shortly. We have the minutes of December 13th before us, and would entertain a motion of approval for those minutes.
I'll move.
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion on those minutes? Seeing none, those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right. Monthly reports are in the process of coming in, and they are shaping up very well. So I think the onesie twosies that might be out there should be in by Friday. We have no public hearings this evening. We do have a number of guests. And our first one is with regards to Verizon Wireless co-location on Harris-Whalen Park Tower, Mr. Valentine. And with that, let's you continue to tee that up.
With me tonight is Colin Fazio. Verizon Wireless is looking to add some infrastructure, pass that down, onto the Harris-Whalen Park Hill. They're looking at doing some co-location on the site that's up there. What they're showing is inside the existing perimeter of the fence, but they're looking at adding a generator and a panel on that. There is an existing tower. They're not looking to add anything higher on the tower. It's kind of hard to see some of those spots, and that they have Colin kind of highlight exactly what they're using, the type of equipment and everything else, but there's no visual change to the tower. They're taking some stuff off, adding some new stuff on, and then some moderate site upgrades or improvements on the property.
Yeah, I mean, this is basically a new co-location for Verizon Wireless. We're not on the facility now, so just a new way to get service to the surrounding area that's needed for capacity issues. So it does involve an antenna array on the tower, ground equipment within the compound on a concrete slab, and a backup generator.
There's enough room.
Yeah, they've submitted a building permit, it was going through the building permit process, and I just said, well, you know, it is on town-owned property, we need to, you know, get before the town board, make sure you guys are comfortable with that.
How many is already up there? How many other?
Well, there's two different, there's some that's on the water tower, so there's
Yeah.
some over there, and then there's others, and I don't know the exact number, that's on the freestanding tower, which is in front of that, so
And this will be,
it's just another one on the tower, it's not going any higher, you can see on the, I think it's the last sketch, it shows the tower itself and the antennas on the top. This is kind of on the side of what that tower is. I think I gave you the site plan. It kind of shows a little bit darker the proposed generator and the proposed panel, and then some underground connections. The second page kind of shows the blow up of that area, and then the third page, I think it's in the lower left part of that, does show the tower itself and you know where the panels are going on that freestanding tower.
So Colin, what's coming off the tower versus what's going on?
So there was a basically similar antenna array at the location that we're taking over. There was another tenant there, I believe it was Clearwire, somewhat similar. So we're basically taking their antenna mounts off, putting ours up, and then putting our antennas up at that location.
Was this prompted by service issues in Penfield, by Penfield residents?
I'm not
You know,
sure if
what-
it's service related or more capacity driven. I'm, you know, not an RF engineer, but it's probably a little bit of both, service and mostly capacity issues.
Like for the data.
Yeah, just the surrounding sites are becoming overloaded with the amount of data use through everyday cell phone use, which is mostly, you know, internet based now. So we have to infill areas that are high capacity.
So certainly one of the things that neighbors might be interested in is that you're going to be putting a generator in. Are you going to test that generator? And if so, have you got a time and date that you're going to do that? Hopefully during what I'll call business hours, 9 to 5
Yeah, it does
versus...
cycle exercise,
Okay.
I think, once a week. I don't know if there's a schedule for that. I mean, maybe if there's something that, like you would like during normal business hours, we could probably work with that.
Yep.
I would just have to talk with our operations group and see what we could actually do. But
I think that would be...
I don't think that's out of the realm.
Sure.
We do that at other locations, so.
So we've done other cell operators, and it runs it every Tuesday at 10 a.m. or
At 10
something
a.m.,
like
sure.
that. It's got a...
Right.
And keep it between business hours and not at midnight on a, you know, Thursday type
Right,
of thing.
yeah.
Obviously, if
Exactly.
we lose power and the generator's running, most folks understand that, but if we could keep it during normal business hours, that'd be great.
Yep.
Is there, maybe this is more a question for Jim or Tony, is this a revenue generating opportunity for the town, these towers, with the service providers?
There is, the town does receive revenue from this.
Okay.
We'll have conversations with Horowitz. He's got all the agreements. There's agreements for the water tower itself and what share of that, and as well as the cell tower. And we've had conversations with Horowitz and make sure that he's up to date on
Okay.
what's
Right, our
coming and
agreement
what's
is
going.
with Crown Castle, who's the tower manager. You guys
Yep.
have a lease with Crown Castle,
That
so
is
you guys
correct.
get a percentage of the revenue or however it's worked
Yeah,
out.
exactly.
Yeah, but they manage the tower.
And I think, as Mark referenced, we'll just take a look and just make sure that if there's any updating that needs to be done to that, we will, you know, to
Okay.
reflect that, you know, if Clearwire, for instance, is coming off and Verizon's going in, we'll just make sure that, you know, it's so noted, you know, in our paperwork and things, so. Okay. And so I see there's going to be some underground wiring that'll have to go in to support that.
Yeah, basically power and fiber backhaul. And there's existing power and fiber source right there on site within that fenced-in compound. So it's basically just new conduits from that existing H-frame to our equipment.
And Colin, when did you hope to have the work started or completed by?
I think if we were able to get our permits in line, and I would think we'd want to start probably February.
Got it.
So to an outside observer walking by, it's going to look the same, it's going to sound the same, there's not going to be...
There's going to be slightly a little bit more ground equipment, but the tower itself, there's not
As
going
far
to
as
be
like the
huge
height
visual
and
representation, right? No change in the height or anything else. We're
Yeah,
basically
yeah,
taking
so-
over old antennas, so it's basically take down old, put up new, so not a lot of difference.
You're not changing the ground, the outside fence is
Nope,
still...
the outside fence is-
This is all inside the...
All inside, yep. Yeah, the whole compound is operated through the water authority, I believe, and we're just inside that compound. So.
Did Clearwire have a generator on site?
They did not, no. No.
Okay. Board, other questions or comments for Colin or for staff? Staff, any additional comments or thoughts that
I would
have
just,
been
I would
added to
just,
the record? or
I
should
would
be?
just say that we've had generator issues around town because of the noise factor and the regularity of the testing. I would suggest, you know, maybe look at the possibility of doing some type of muffling or buffering around that generator. And I'm not quite sure what that would be at this point in time, but
Sound enclosures on the unit usually.
something just to make sure that, I mean, it is close to the residences there in the Hidden Meadow, and you just want to make sure that it's not going to become a nuisance, because sooner or later, we're going to get a call, and we're going to have to go out and do it anyway, so it's good to look at it initially to see if you can do something to muffle that sound.
I'll see what options are out there, but if you're talking about some kind of sound shrouding or something, you know, that ties into a lot of the space that's available up there, which is tight as it is. And that means adding more infrastructure around the generator, which we don't technically
I would just look at
have.
some options, just to make sure, because if
You can just-
it comes to a point where we have to do it, because we're asked to do
It
it,
becomes a
you should be
nuisance.
prepared to be able to do it.
You can just provide me with the data of what the generator, the
Yeah,
DPA
I
and
can
stuff is
provide
right
the
now.
decibel levels of what it runs at.
What unit it is, and we can compare that with what we've done in other locations.
Colin, I'm going to make an assumption it's natural gas operated.
It's actually diesel.
No, actually diesel.
Yes.
Okay, so I think then that I think just brings to the table even more, just to make sure that from a noise standpoint, obviously natural gas will run a little quieter than a diesel, but certainly there's been some improvements to the diesel power and engines. So, but yeah, getting the decibel to mark and taking a look.
Yeah, I'll
would be-
provide the
would be
decibel
good.
levels, and I think nowadays, since our ground equipment is smaller, they've pared down some of the generator sizes, so they probably aren't as loud as the ones that we used to, power the 12 by 30 shelters and
Sure.
stuff like that, so.
All right.
But I will provide that information.
Okay, great, excellent. Staff, anything else? Colin, anything additional that you haven't added to the record that you believe is pertinent to the application?
No, I believe that's it.
Okay. Board comfortable with what's being proposed for that?
Yes.
All right, someone like to make a motion for approval?
I'll make a motion for approval, subject to the conditions we set forth in the discussion regarding noise level, acceptable noise level as part of the resolution.
I'll second.
Okay. Moved and seconded. Any further questions or comments? Seeing none, those in favor, aye?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, I'd ask that you continue to work with Mr. Valentine and his team, and provide any information. He'll follow up with a letter to kind of document and memorialize this discussion.
Okay,
All right?
thank you very much.
Great, appreciate it, thank you very much. We'll move on to a discussion, Rick Rock and Doug, doesn't
Well, I
look
see
like
Rick Rock, but I certainly
doesn't
don't
look like
see Doug.
I was gonna say, it doesn't look like Doug to me, but,
Rick Rock with Remax Plus Commercial, representing Louis Rivero for 1798 Penfield Road, with a potential development of Starbucks. And this is Jill Starks with Ferrara Jarrow, and they represent Starbucks. So we both are here in attendance to answer any questions that I could answer, and then she could answer.
excellent, all right. And so before you get started, I would ask Mr. Costello if he has any additional comments before we get into it.
Just to tee it up for you, the other day, Mr. LaFountain and some of his town staff met with Louis, who could not be here this evening. Louis's intent is to try and develop the vacant parcel adjacent to his Dunkin' Donut facility at the 1802 Penfield Road. That property, the subject property is 1798 Penfield Road. Because he couldn't be here this evening, He asked Rick and Jill to take his place. I'm going to let you walk through and talk about the process as to what you'd like to do on the site.
Okay. So Starbucks would like to obviously be on Penfield Road, have a drive-through. This site can accommodate it.
Is that the main reason why it wants to move? Because there wasn't enough room for a drive-through
Yes.
on the other?
Yes, on the current site, a drive-through couldn't be accommodated
Gotcha.
on that.
And it may be better to have Jill speak on behalf of Starbucks instead of me. I can
That's
talk
fine.
about the site
Well,
itself.
it's sort of intriguing, you know, you're moving 2 doors down, so to speak, you know?
Right.
The reasoning.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Right, and just for a point of reference, Starbucks is moving towards total drive-throughs. That's, when you move from a store with no drive-through to one nearby that has a drive-through, they gain somewhere between 35 and 50% more business. I mean, drive-throughs are that significant to them. So that's why every opportunity they have to move to a site that will accommodate a drive-through, they want to do that.
As to the site plan, the concept plan here, Starbucks looked at this and wanted to give the best impression of traffic flow. And typically, one would ask to have a right in and a right out, but that hinders a number of things. One is if they went through the drive-through and had a curb cut up front, and you ordered and then you left and it was an order that was misplaced or not fully in your bag of goods, you couldn't come back. You'd have to go down the street, turn around, and come back. This way, this circulates the building, it goes to the back, goes to the side, and then the traffic flow flows much better, and it's less of a hinder, and it doesn't, kind of like the one curb cut that's there now with the ingress egress works really well, and circulating the building going back also helps to deter the traffic in the right direction. So they could, this particular property, you can go to the back and work your way to 5 Mile Line Road. You can work your way to Liberty Road, Liberty Street, and also come back onto Penfield Road.
But the reason why you want to be on that side of the road and everything's just like Dunkin' Donuts and like your other Starbucks is that people are driving down the road and make a right in and then they come
Well,
out.
it's the morning side
It's
of the
Yeah.
road.
what we call as the morning side of the road.
Yeah, they're going to be on
Exactly.
Penfield
Right.
Road. That's going to be the biggest obstacle, isn't it? It's because everybody's going to be on Penfield Road, turning on to Penfield Road. Chances are they're not going to want to go down Liberty Street or something to...
No, but when they exit
It
out.
would be easier
this
than the
is-
current Starbucks as far as how
Yes.
close it is to
Exactly.
the
Yes.
stoplight.
Yeah, that's true.
Yes.
One of the things you may remember, a couple of years ago when the state DOT went in and did all the resurfacing of Penfield Road, they actually eliminated the curb cut on this property. If you remember, it was the
Earl Kids.
Earl
Right.
Kid's house.
Sure.
They took away that driveway. They didn't say that they couldn't put it back in, but I'm certain it would be quite the battle to try and get it. They did the same thing across the street. So I think Lewis has, lost the fight to have to go in and take care of trying to get another curb cut. I think the curb cut probably is a good thing not to be there. It would cause conflict with trying to get out of the main driveway here with what's going on with Dunkin' Donuts in the morning. So. Can you talk a little bit about, we don't have very many buildings in the four corners, if any, that have drive-through in front of the building, or driving in front of it. Can you talk a little about what you might do to, try to mitigate it or buffer it somehow?
Well, certainly they're open to suggestions of, landscaping and fencing, whatever the town would like to see. I'm certain that Starbucks can accommodate. The issue here really is the way the building is set up internally, the way the systems work inside. The drive-through has to be behind the coffee bar area, so they have access to that, the coffee.
Right.
And so it's got to be on the side of it, so the building couldn't be turned or couldn't, this was really the only way it fit in there, and then to have the drive-through go around it. So really, they understand that maybe that's not ideal in this situation, but certainly, bushes, trees, berms, whatever you'd like to see there, they'd be glad to accommodate that.
probably a way architecturally too, that you can make the drive-through facing the thoroughfare not look like a drive-through. You know, either a overhang or, you know, architecturally
Oh,
recessed somehow to make it not look like a flat, you know, traditional drive-through.
Sure.
Absolutely.
So, Kaz, this is not in the historic district. However, you know, we've got a couple of folks on the Historic Preservation Board, one in particular that comes to mind, that having them take a look at this and offer up a thought, just something, you know, something to consider.
Yeah, and I think you're right, Tony. I think when they finally submit the proposal, we will share that with the board and get a recommendation back, or just a comment back to you, just as a reference to, you know, what their thoughts are. There's no approval process.
The color scheme, when we did the little mini plaza, so to speak, with Hanwha, Dunkin' Donuts and everything was, you know, in this kind of color scheme.
Right, and we
All
spoke to
matches
Lewis
alike.
about that, and he's totally supportive of doing a colonial type style building, and he's gonna have somebody, actually, he's gonna have somebody working on it immediately to start coming up with some concepts.
Lewis owns the rest of those
Oh, I know.
buildings, so he's
Yeah,
gonna
yeah.
want them all to tie in and look like a cohesive
Really to have that village
A little bit, yeah.
look to it.
appearance, yeah.
Jill, you're showing 26 parking spaces on the site to accommodate use. Is Starbucks comfortable with that number of spaces?
Yes, in addition, there's cross parking for the rest of the
And you're gonna
center.
provide cross parking and access for Lewis's other remaining properties?
Yes, he will provide that.
So if I go to Dunkin' Donuts and it's full, I can go over here and park and vice versa?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And 26 though in itself should be plenty for Starbucks.
Okay.
Would be connectivity, a safety for pedestrians to get around. That was a concern before.
We'd have to look
you know?
at some crosswalks and sidewalks and
Right.
everything else, as, you know, as we get
Yeah,
into a
the
site
sketch.
plan
It's a lot
version of it.
of parking, you know, just, break it up to be sure.
Yep.
What's the size of the current Starbucks? The square footage?
Oh my gosh, that's a good question. I think it's, I don't know exactly. I'm sure that's over 2,000 square feet.
But it's smaller.
Can-
This
No, This would probably be slightly smaller.
this would be smaller.
I believe this would be a little smaller with 2,000 square
Can
feet.
you, 2,100 square feet?
2,100?
I just traced it on my map. It's
Oh, okay, thank you.
about 2,100.
All right, and this would be 2,000, so.
Can you just clarify for me, this particular store will have an inside sit-down operation and the drive-through?
Yes,
Okay,
So a full cafe.
Yes.
right, okay.
So what percent of the business do they believe is drive-through? I mean, if you take a look at, you know, industry standards, so to speak, what percent is drive-through versus, you know, sit-in or dine-in?
you know, I'm glad you asked that question because we were just out with the Starbucks executives and we asked them that same question. And they said it varies significantly from store to store and region to region. They said some places it's 75%, other places it's 40%. So, not sure. I would, you know, 50.
And it probably
55.
depends upon day of week too.
Right.
You know, Monday through Friday, folks to get their coffee and get to work versus a Saturday, Sunday or an evening, you might want to just spend some time and,
Overall, on average, 50% might be a good number.
okay. Interesting. We could also have Bruce take a look. Bruce Zaretsky, our landscape architect, could also take a look at that and offer up any thoughts. Because there's a balance, certainly, of having the drive-through right in the front there. So it's nice that I see the order board is back into the property. But there's that balance of making sure folks see you and know you're there versus buffering it to a point that you know they're impacting, you know, business. So it might be good for.
We also
Bruce.
look at headlights and stuff coming around, and I know we've done that with Tim Hortons on Penfield Road. There was some concern with residents across the street. This isn't as much of a residential district, but anytime you've got headlights kind of lined up coming across, you can look at the impact across the street, if any.
Yeah, I'm struggling with this concept. I mean, my knee-jerk reaction is I'm not a fan. The U-shaped drive-through right there on the road is I mean, especially with the Dunkin' Donuts immediately to the right, where how you have the Dunkin' Donuts up against the street with a little patio, and you have the drive-through come through an L shape around. I mean, I'm just trying to I'm having a hard time with the concept of parking in the back, the cars right up on front. It's not really what I envision with sort of the center of the four corners. It's not pedestrian friendly to enter the restaurant off of 441. I mean, you have to go down or into the plaza. I mean, I just, you know, my knee-jerk reaction I said tonight is I'm not in favor of this plan. It may grow on me, but for right now, I'm not in favor of this.
The Dunkin' site is, call it, it's a reverse drive-through, so you actually have to go all the way back to the property and around and circulate. Whereas here, you come in, you're halfway, and you're turning into it. In the reverse drive-through, they typically don't like to see the reverse drive-through. Based on where the property sits for the Dunkin' and the layout, that's how it ended up here, you know, got approved. Here, they just wanted to simplify it, to move the traffic in, move the traffic out.
Well, and partly it's the width of the site itself, in order to like make even a horseshoe drive-through at the back.
Right.
You'd have to move the building the other direction, and the site's not wide enough to do that. So they weren't able to come up with a configuration that the site would accommodate with the drive-through behind it.
Right, and I can appreciate that. So what I would say is that maybe this is not the right site for what you're trying to accomplish. I mean, I just because it's there and just because this fits ideally to Starbucks' desires doesn't mean that this is the right spot for a drive-through in this location. Again, I understand what is trying to be accomplished. I mean, you can have the building sort of center here, I mean, I'm just drive-through over here, traffic flow. I mean, I'm just trying to think, in this right here is going to be a mess. Trying to get any number of cars out into here when in the morning or in the afternoon with cars coming into Dunkin' Donuts.
Well,
So I mean, I don't know if, and this may be a preliminary study, a concept site. I mean, I just don't understand, I just don't think that this is very well defined or thought out, considering the traffic that comes in and out here. The Dunkin' Donuts truck parks here. So I don't know where now you're gonna put, 18-wheeler somewhere on site during peak times. I think it's Friday morning usually the truck is there. But that parks there, and that blocks the traffic currently.
I'm sure they can address that with the deliveries. The current Starbucks now, in a sense, is, you're driving in, you're parking, you're getting out, you're going in, you're coming back out. And their thought was to make it more user-friendly. And again, the drive-through is key to them. And 70+% of the customers are now using drive-through. And the size of the site and the width of the site and what we're working with, they felt that this was the best layout on a concept plan. Now, can we change it?
So let me just throw a big picture out here. If the same property owner owns the current Starbucks, Dunkin' Donuts, and the property we're looking at tonight, correct?
No.
No?
No.
Okay.
He owns Dunkin' Donuts, he owns this
okay.
site, and the
property's
other,
behind.
and the property's behind, but
And the property
not the
in
current
rear.
Starbucks.
Correct.
Okay, yeah. Any thought of sort of big picture of looking at maybe not trying to pigeonhole this into the current site, but redesigning the flow of the traffic in the parking lot on site if all three of these parcels are owned by the same owner? I mean, I'm also trying to envision the Hung Wah parking lot, the barber shop. I mean, do you have a sense of how many cars come in and out of the current parking lot today, either through the back or the front, and how many cars you anticipate now as an increase because there is a drive-through? I mean, if you anticipate X number of dollar increase because of a drive-through, do you anticipate 200 more cars a day because there is a drive-through? I mean, these cars are now going to try to move through this parking lot here, which is going to become problematic for these cars in the back. This isn't, I don't even know if this is paved.
Not yet.
Or if the plan, I mean, you're going to have more people cutting through in the back parking lot here over stone paved. I mean, I don't know how you want to address that, but it's just, I'm not sure if the flow, it's already difficult with how the Dunkin' Donuts parking lot is set up, but adding sort of this increase of traffic and having them cut through, and I just, again, I'm not sure, just because it fits in this concept design, if it's the right use for that property. So, I mean, those are some of the questions, that's my comments. I speak for myself on this.
And there's a number of things I can't answer because I'm not Lewis, but
Right.
He's also asked that he's available via phone conference right now to talk about it if you wish, to get some direct answers from him.
Where's the start? Where's the cashier? Where's the sign that you first make your selection? Is it down there by one?
Yes.
Is it down there?
Yeah.
Is that it?
And then there's the
Yeah.
one window.
Yes, right down here is the menu board.
Yeah.
They use like a 5-car stack up to the menu board,
Right.
from the menu board to the window, because by the time you place an order in 5 cars, your order's ready.
Yeah.
So it's sort of a in and out, so it keeps it flowing.
I think, the only thing I don't like about is having the cars right in the front like that. It's kind of a barrier, you like to see in a Four Corners village like district to have the buildings up closer to the road and not cars in between them. If there's any way to be able to move it.
They tried every which way to
the
try to
biggest-
accommodate that, because you can visually see that most of the storefronts are right up on the street. But unfortunately,
It looks
the way
like
the
there's all this
kitchen is set up in
property.
there-
There's no way, there's all this green.
we couldn't turn it the other direction because it wouldn't fit. And then, the kitchen's down in the back, so we couldn't do the horseshoe, and even that wasn't enough turning radius to accommodate it. So unfortunately, it's just the width of the site that was the restriction.
Is there a reason why the kitchen couldn't be in the back? I mean,
Yeah.
every building can be
Yeah, not all
fitted
Starbucks
the
are the
way you need to
same.
fit it.
Some will look different.
They're not all the same, but they're set up internally the same. They can be like a flipped version of themselves, but they need to be on the long side that the coffee bar kitchen area is. I mean, I guess they could do anything, but I don't know that they redesigned the whole store for one location like that. I don't know that they have that, they're doing so many sites, I don't know that they have the capacity to do that. I think they would
I
just,
think we're at the juncture where we certainly know what's best for Starbucks, and we're trying to figure out what's best for Penfield.
right, and they tried the utmost to try to do landscaping, whatever they can do. Unfortunately, this was the only configuration Starbucks could figure out that would work, that would get the cars through and have some good circulation and give enough queue space, and that, so that it flowed very well in here and worked with the kitchen. Anything that they can do to help in shielding the drive-through line from the street, they'd be more than glad to do that.
So I think there's enough questions on the table and concerns on the table that I might suggest that this matter be tabled before the board this evening. So I think you've heard a number of comments and some concerns from board members about how it flows or doesn't flow, and the site itself and some of the limitations associated with that. What I might suggest is that we table it for 2 weeks to give not only yourself and the owner, who's not with us, an opportunity to take a look. And I get the fact that Starbucks has taken a look at this and moved things around and flip-flopped it and what have you. But I will say that it probably warrants some additional soak time for both parties. And so I might suggest that the board look to table that. And I put that out for consideration.
I would make that motion.
I'll second that.
Okay, so it's moved and seconded. So what that means is that the next opportunity for discussion with this board would be on the 24th of January. So same location, same time, and again, it would give an opportunity. I would say that during that time, we may be internally looking at spending some time with our landscape architect. We may be spending some time with our historic preservation board member and what have you. And certainly, again, I get the fact that you and Starbucks have looked at this site, but I might encourage maybe some further discussion, between the current owner and Starbucks to see if there is any other alternatives that could possibly work for the site. And then plan on resuming the conversation on the 24th. I would ask staff any additional thoughts, comments that have not been added to the record that we should have added to the record before we take a vote on this matter. Rick, Jill, anything additional that you'd like to put onto the record that you haven't already?
Nope.
Okay.
I think we're good.
Board, any additional questions or comments or some additional things you might like to see between now and the 24th? Okay, so we have a motion and a second to table this matter. Those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, so it'll be tabled until the 24th.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, we'll next move into action items, and the first action item on the agenda tonight is the Shaw request for special permits at 2041 Penfield Road, and we held a public hearing on this. Mr. Costello, your name is associated with this. Anything additional that you would like to add that has either happened or occurred since the public hearing?
Just a quick recap. We had the public hearing on December 20th. Nari Shah, who's here with us this evening, presented. He indicated there were three companies, Consumer Insights Inc., Autism Learning Partners LLC, and M&M Creations Nail and Spa. He indicated that Consumer Insights had 10 to 12 employees on the site, no visitors to speak of, hours of operation 8 to 5. Autism Group is taking over the east half of the first floor. The other group is taking over the second floor, 3,000 square feet. Autism Partners have 6 employees and are there from 8:30 to 6. And then the final one was the M&M, which is half the building where his dad operates from, with 4 employees with the potential for 4 clients at any one time. Their hours were from 9 to 8, and that was a question that Tony had at the public hearing. What was the weekend hours? Reach checked that out for us, and they will be open on Saturday from 9 to 5 and closed on Sunday. The site has 68 parking spaces, and one of the questions that you asked was the status of the sign to come down, the third sign to come down. They indicated that they would take that down within a month, and that's probably coming up the next week or so. Did I miss anything?
No.
Okay. That's kind of where we are.
Great recap.
Thank you.
And I don't believe we had anybody speak
No,
in addition
that's right.
to your...
Okay. Questions, comments, discussion?
I think the only comment that a couple comments that I have is, one, I'm glad to see some activity happening at that building. It's been vacant for a while now, and I'm sure you're glad to see some tenants moving in there and some activity. I think that's good. I'm going to stay consistent with my comment at the public hearing. I truly believe that that site needs some additional landscaping to it. I drive by it probably every other day. It's in a great visible location, and I really think the building just looks sterile from the outside. I realize it's winter, but even driving past it in the summer, I just didn't see a pop or a wow factor that building and that site could have the potential of really being something to stand out as you kind of crest over Penfield Road there, coming and going east and west. And so I would strongly encourage you and your father to take a look at the landscaping and try to create a little bit of a buzz or a little bit of a pop. And I don't think it needs to be anything, exceptional as far as a big expense. Some window dressings and some flower beds or something like that that is really going to stand out and make that site something that can be really nice versus just kind of what I consider to be a sterile view from 441 going east and west on the building. Otherwise, I'm excited to see some activity going there, but that's just my comment for the record.
Right. Can I comment on that?
Absolutely.
So, Dad, like underneath the signs is one place where we like to see some flowers or some color or something like that. In the past, they've had some flowers, then they put some like bushes, like I don't know, like just red bushes or green bushes or something. I would imagine that Dad would want to do the same kind of thing near the sign of the other one, so add some color. He actually spoke of that too. He's on the same page as you. Like he wants the property to look good. He wants the eyes to look favorable on the building too. So suggestions like when you said flower beds, maybe near the building or sign or something. Is that what you're talking
Yeah,
about?
I mean, you guys are the owners of the building, and I respect that, and I'll leave that up to you, but just something that's going to make the site and make the property look vibrant.
Kind of like when you're going down, I enjoy this. Like, I sometimes drive by just because I want to look at it. But like, so like on 5 Mile Line, after the high school, they have that elderly home where sometimes they put the tulips up and everything. It's just nice to. Is that like something similar or something like nothing crazy, but like right now I understand that you don't see that much, but last summer and everything, it was really after excavation and everything, we were working on just getting the soil and the green. I understand you're looking for leaves and all that different things, but we were way behind that, so we actually had the commercial landscapers actually just retreat the soil, so then you don't see weeds popping everywhere. So I think that would be a next step and everything. And
yeah, I think you're on the
yeah,
right
I think
path.
it's just a steady thing. I mean, it's hard to do the landscaping when there's no tenants and there's like excavation and all that stuff, but even with my father on the front end of his one, it was very important that he got that garage, which thank you for approving that, because now he's more disabled, so it's hard when that construction is going on to put a lot of the landscaping in.
And you can go a long way inexpensively these days with perennials or annuals.
Yeah, and I'm
some shrubbery that can make it look really nice at not a
we
huge
are
expense.
completely like we're so grateful for the tenants and everything, and we think we found really good ones too. The owners too of the businesses, it's different. You can have a business that's a good business, but even the owners of the businesses are very understanding with whatever we're doing and just trying to make it work as a team. So we're pretty happy how it's come along.
The only suggestion to just piggyback off of Andy's comments is, I used to live right across the street, so I'm
you did?
very familiar with the spot, the location, and looking out the window. I would just maybe a couple arborvitaes in front of the electrical boxes there on the corner of the building. Those are very apparent, whether you're driving by, standing there, looking at the building, they just stand out. So
Right. I understand what it says.
Okay.
So I can't even spell operations, but
I couldn't
in
either.
front of electrical.
I can get an arbor, I think.
Window dressing, what did you mean by window dressing?
Paul, you mentioned it the other day, I apologize, just like the boxes next to the
boxes.
windows
Window
where
boxes.
there's
Something
what,
like that.
little-
So,
yeah, just
same
something.
kind of.
I think what you might be
breaks it
getting
up
at, yeah,
a little
it's sterile in the sense it's a big building.
Yes.
And it's close to the road, it's a bright building.
Yes.
So I think there's a way to really pop some color that can really offset a lot of that white. Could it be, window boxes, some flowering tree, a couple flowering trees to anchor?
Something like that, yeah.
Because the
So I
height
think
can then
like
kind of
window
break it
dressing
up.
might entail me getting on a ladder to do something. So I'm not
No.
fond of that stuff. So, but I like some trees that will grow with or
Yeah.
something like that. Or
That can kind of anchor the corners a little bit. And that
Or
just
something like that.
That breaks up the height of the building and makes more attractive.
yeah.
And again, it's in a prime location, and I can't tell you how many thousands of people must drive past it every single day.
These guys can.
36,000, and so, I ask that
No,
you just
I-
make the extra effort to kind of give it a little
Yeah.
bit of a pop.
Yeah, I think that's a good point.
Okay.
Because it is a reflection on you and your business.
No,
there's
it's
no doubt.
completely. I mean, we're that's our home. I mean, that's a lot of people would say that's their business and whatever, but that's our home. I mean, my
Yeah.
father's there, I'm there, and
And you're both Penfield residents.
we're very proud of the place. So
Okay. And again, Mark, that might be an opportunity, Mark and Kaz, an opportunity to have Bruce take a quick look at it.
Yeah, we could take the existing landscaping plan for the site and maybe look at some
Sure.
embellishments
Just
here
take a
and there
look
and
at
bring
it.
it back to you, make sure you're comfortable with it before he spends the money.
Right.
And if you are, then we'll
That'd be
go
helpful.
forward.
yeah,
So you'll sit down with Bruce and Mark and I, and we can do it together.
From a use standpoint, the three uses that are proposed, no concerns by the board by way of the use themselves, parking, ingress, egress, anything like that.
I think they're
Hours of
all
operation.
low intensity
Yeah.
type uses, kind of,
Okay.
as you said, 9 to 5, 8 to 5.
very good. I mean,
Yeah.
they're just amazing.
We have about a quarter of the building left to fill,
Yeah, we're just crossing our fingers.
possibly somebody might come in.
There's always things that sometimes people have looked at it, but it's the better quarter of the building, so it should go. So,
Okay.
Good.
and we want to make sure that it's a good tenant too. So,
Okay. Staff, any additional comments? Okay. So,
I'll move to approve as requested the uses.
I should say
okay. So as we move and seconded, we had discussion around, working with Bruce Zaretsky on a couple of items there, but for the most part, the rest of the building itself has been, either built out or finished, minus the small area that still is open for leasing. Any additional thoughts or comments?
Just 2 points. Number one, they had an outstanding, really the only last thing they had to do to be in total compliance with the site plan was to enclose their dumpster, which they took care of. And then I guess the other part of that is you'll ask me to write a resolution to put into the next meeting.
Absolutely, absolutely. So we'll look to do that, and we'll have something as it relates to the landscaping. And we'll talk about the sign that you'd mentioned early on as well. Okay, so moved and seconded. Those in favor, aye?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, it's approved. We'll see it on the agenda for next Wednesday. All right, we'll move on to 1315 Sweets Corners Road, Wickham Farms, Conservation Easement, Mr. Valentine. I think we have Kevin and Carolyn. I think Bill and Debbie, and maybe even Dale are goofing off.
Short straw, really a short straw.
And I was just gonna say, you guys must have either forgot to get a nicer Christmas present or something like that, you ended up here in snowy Penfield.
You were brain dead.
Yeah.
All right, so Mr. Costello, Mr. Valentine, Mr. Nersinger, any additional comments, thoughts, or anything that you would like to tee up before we get started this evening?
It's just a little recap. We had Bill and Debbie here last month, kind of ran through what they're looking at for Sweets Corners Road. They're looking to move their operations over there. Shared with the board their list of items, and execs got some extras if somebody's still needing them, or some site plans. So showing their thoughts over there. It's before the town board to look at the conservation easement portion of it. There's a portion of it that's under what's the new mixed use piece. The piece on the east would fall into the conservation easement area, as well as to look at what is the farmstead area, and they kind of blocked that off in the reddish area with that. So it's before this board to obviously look at those two areas. Is the items, activities in keeping with the conservation easement, and is the board generally comfortable with the farmstead area that's shown. Based on that, if that does move ahead, obviously they go before the planning board, work on site plan items, parking locations, layouts, building, that type of stuff, or that level of detail would fall under the planning board's purview.
Okay, so, thank you.
I guess we would just entertain any other questions that the board may have for us as a follow-up to that presentation that Bill gave.
I thought it was a very good presentation, and you were here too to help us with it as we went through it. I thought it was really well presented in what to do with that conservation easement, and he spent a lot of time thinking about that not to put any of that mixed-use activity on the land that was the woman's property, the Frank property, whatever. That was the property that was going to stay for a farmstead, for the environment, for farming. So, we have nothing to say about the mixed-use end of it. That's the planning board to decide where everything's going to go there. I think we'd love to dig into that, but that is their purview. And in my mind, as a town board member, I would support the farmstead at the location as presented.
Were there any concerns raised by PRC or maybe Horowitz on just the number of parking spots to, satisfy the farmstead? Is there somewhere, we're looking at across the street off Dublin Road, how many parking spots do they have at the cidery? Not many, right?
There's 13 on that.
13, so I'm just trying to fit, there's 179, is that right?
150, or 100 and, I'm sorry. 175 proposed. That's gravel.
We have had conversations with Horowitz and Pete about it, and we've gone between the conservation easement, which restricts it to the sale area. We have a little bit different area where the sale area is basically a building. Here you have U-Pick, so it's more of an outdoor area with that. So we've talked to them also falling under our ag and markets, not ag and markets, our farm market regulations, which basically, on the other hand, we want to make sure there's enough spaces so you don't have people parking on the street.
Yeah,
so
no, I get that.
Under farm market, we have more of a concern on that end of it, that you've got people parking up and down Sweets Corners Road and Dublin Road, and creating traffic issues. So kind of converse to the conservation easement and limiting stuff with that. We've had more issues with farm markets to make sure they have enough parking and can handle it, and I think that's part of what Bill brought in and showed his photos is, they had 200 plus cars, and you guys can jump in wherever this year, and they were even parking people, across the street in the open field, across the street on they own property on the other side of Sweets Corners as well. So he's trying to, show that he's got enough spaces that are out there. They're showing them as gravel. They're not looking to pave them. That we have some concerns or issues with that in the conservation area. I think with planning board, we'll still look at, having parking accommodating the mixed use side of things. So having some parking on that side, which, could limit, or pare down some of that parking there.
Well, I guess that's my concern. I don't know if Ag and Markets Law has a stipulation of what is considered excessive number of parking spots for a farmstead, but a portion on busy peak days, beautiful summer days, I don't know if you have numbers, but a good portion of these parkers are going to be using the mixed-use portion. So I just want to make sure that we're not utilizing the farmstead excessively to support the mixed-use portion of this. So I just want to make sure that if the Ag and Markets Law doesn't stipulate, or if we're not playing in gray territory here or something, that's my
And that's
concern.
something I think as we get to the planning board end of it, and we've shared with the Wickhams before, is we got to look at, to make sure we're servicing the mixed use area with parking on that site there. I know they're looking at having kind of the barn as the center of operations, so we'll have to look at some logistics. You park, you come in, you get your stuff, you go out, you pick, you do whatever your activities. But that's something, we'll look with the planning board, is to look at, can we locate some parking there for we call it the activity barn or whatever on that end? Is there some dedicated spaces just for that? So if it's not, you pick time of year and there's an activity happening, the parking's located on that side of it. So that's some of the stuff at least, staff's going to look, move forward and work with the planning board on that.
Okay.
Just something the board will explore.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, as far as the rest of the features on the farmstead, I don't have issues with those. It's just, it's just more of the
And I think,
parking.
if you guys want to share into that, I think that the 175 is kind of a peak time frame for that fall you pick
Sure.
area. You're never looking at on a daily, I think they said 30 to 40 people with, some of the other stuff. But if-
Yeah, I think Bill kind of touched on it last week. The reality is, with the move over to Sweets Corners, I think, at least our initial thought is we're going to transition our business from, right now we're open April through October 31. I think we're really going to transition to a fall business. So, yeah, the fall is when our peak load is, because people are showing up for you pick apples, you pick pumpkins. That's when that's when we need the parking spaces. And then the other time of the year is just CSA pickup. We have the 300 families that come once a week.
More than 300.
Yeah, 300 plus families when you include the shares that come, once a week. So that's the other time for.
Could you, or would you utilize the parking and the off periods outside the fall for possibly equipment storage or something of that nature?
Sure.
It would be, because I'm thinking to myself, if you're looking at the intent of a farm market operation or a farming operation, equipment has to be stored somewhere,
Sure.
and it probably could be stored probably anywhere within the easement just because it's farming equipment. So I'm thinking that maybe you're utilizing it for that purpose as well.
Sure, yeah, as long as we can store it tastefully and not,
Yeah.
not leave it as an eyesore, yeah. Of course.
Or not.
The other thing I think that we have to keep in mind is the CSA. So when you have 300 plus families, coming and going, and that business starts to build because you got some product that comes out in the spring, then into the summer and then into the fall. So it's kind of a migration that you have for that, and I would see that the parking would be more open and empty in the winter, early spring, and then the rest of the time there's going to be some amount of regular activity. I might suggest to the board that as we take a look, if we're comfortable with the farmstead piece, because that is our that is kind of under our responsibility. If we're comfortable with that, then what I might suggest that the planning board work with the details on the parking and the activities and things like that. That really falls under theirs. And what will happen is that we'll ultimately come back to the board once they've gone through and vetted that out. Then it'll come back to us, for that final confirmation for that. So if folks are comfortable with that, that might be the way that I think we take a look at it.
Yep, I'm good.
All right. Motion to, well, before I do that, I would just ask staff any additional comments or items that we should put on the record that we haven't put on the record tonight.
I just wanted to add to Rob's comments earlier with Ag and Markets. We did reach out to Ag and Markets before these meetings took place to discuss the proposed uses, as well as parking, the site improvements. Based on the list of proposed activities in the letter of intent, I specifically spoke about parking with them, and that did fall as an item back to the town to work through that. to make sure that it meets what we need based on the use of the land.
Okay.
So, again, kicking it back through the planning board process and having the applicant discuss their proposal and justify why they need X amount of parking, and we'd go through that process just like we always would.
Okay. Thank you.
And then I would just ask the Wickhams, any additional comments that you'd like to add to the record that we haven't already discussed, either in the previous conversation or any of the handout materials that you've submitted?
I think between today and Bill's presentation, we covered it.
Okay, great. So that's the case, would entertain a motion of approval to move it to the next step, which would be to the planning board for their review, and then one of the conditions of their review would ultimately come back to us for the, final confirmation of the farmstead.
I move that we approve the farmstead in the conservation easement, and what you just said, that it goes through the process to the planning board for the delivery of where the parking should be.
And the other.
Yeah, next steps.
Okay.
I'll second.
Second. All right, it's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion?
Have you decided what you're going to do with the batting cages?
No, no, we
Because
haven't.
my son is going to be very disappointed.
Maybe we'll sell him a machine.
Look how nice in his front yard.
They're incredible.
I can tell you, I spent hundreds of dollars there this summer.
And I can promise you, I spent hundreds of hours fixing it. So I don't know. I mean, maybe not. I think.
I would encourage, if you're going to think of not moving them, maybe reach out to Greg Camp over at Penfield Little League and see if
That could be a
some
fun
relationship could be made there.
Yeah, we're open to. We don't have a set plan for them, so open
That would be
to.
an incredible.
If you want to drop them off at
addition.
26 Jackson Road Extension, please feel free to
We can probably work out a maintenance agreement for you to continue.
That's the thing. They need like a full-time maintenance man to keep them running.
That's not you, right?
It has been.
I was just going to say that.
It has been.
Okay, so it's been moved and seconded, and see no further discussion other than some discussion around batting cages. I'll ask those in favor. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, great. Good luck with the next phase with the planning board, and
Thank you.
good luck with the batting cages, I guess.
Yeah, very much
So
appreciated.
we'll be in touch about setting up a sketch plan application with the planning board as the first step, and then
Okay.
go through that process, move forward into preliminary final after that. Those are two separate public hearings, and we'll go through those steps. And as the supervisor said, once that's concluded, that comes back to the town board for final agreement about the farmstead area.
Okay. Actually, the only thing I didn't cover I think Bill had mentioned, the one thing we'd like to have is something where, something basically on the record that the interpretation of how we're operating within the easement is there, so that, down the road, if the board changes.
I think the fact that we're approving it is the
Well,
interpretation.
there'll be some follow-up. I
Yeah.
mean, from this, there'll be some follow-up documentation and letter
The
for
letter
that.
staff will generate on
Got it.
the board's behalf and provide to you.
Cool.
Thank you.
Which will be reviewed, obviously, by myself, the board,
Of course.
and our town attorney, so,
Okay.
okay?
Thank you very much.
Cool.
All right,
That letter
great.
would stay with
Sure.
the project,
Enjoy.
taking everything else.
Perfect.
All right?
Wonderful.
Thank you.
All right,
Bob.
we will, we'll continue on with our agenda. The next item is 1209 Shoecraft Road, hold harmless agreement. Mr. Valentine.
I think you skipped ahead one,
Did I?
Supervisor.
No.
No?
He's on target.
Poll
I think I'm
9.
still on target.
He said 1209.
What are you reading?
Are we at Bayview Landing?
No, we're at
Oh, I have
You
an
got the old
I got an
copy.
old agenda.
Let me upgrade them.
Thank you, thank you.
Or take an agenda next to you.
I have an old agenda, my apologies.
So, we'll start.
We can forget that.
We'll start again. Item C, 1209.
1209.
Thank you.
I say I can stick this up on the
But you have it.
wall.
I didn't know about
What am I doing?
This is a single-family residence north of Meadowbrook. So I'll stick it over on the wall.
Let me help you.
Over behind us, so it is.
I can do it a little bit quicker for him. 1 second. Mark.
Is that it?
Moving faster than that.
Yeah. Oh, there you go. Yeah.
So 1209 Shoecraft. The Meadowbrook subdivision is to the south, so Meadowbrook is down here. Shoecraft Road heading north towards Webster. There's a property, there's an existing house in the front of the road and then a flag lot house, or flag lot property behind that with some wetlands off of that. We've been looking at an admin approval for a single-family house on the property using the entirety of the acreage with a flag lot out to the road. What is before you tonight is a request to connect to the sanitary sewer, which is out in front of this house, but with a private force main that comes from the house in the back. So they're pumping from their house around down to our infrastructure, which is here. We are not going to be taking ownership of their single-family force main on that. We've taken force mains in other locations, but as we've done most recently with curves on Penfield Road, they're looking to provide a private force main from their building down Penfield Road to our infrastructure. Basically what we've worked with the town attorney, Mr. Horowitz, is an agreement that they know that that's their private line. They've got to maintain it. Yes, it's in our right-of-way, but it's not our infrastructure. It is private. If it becomes damaged, if it needs to be staked out, that's on them, and they understand that. So that would be an agreement that they sign. If the board's supportive of it, have the supervisor sign it. That's filed with the county that have run with the land. So obviously this current homeowner knows it, but as they sell it in the future, they come back and say, hey, my sanitary sewer's not working. We make sure our manhole and our infrastructure is good. Everything else is private, and it's kind of at your own risk to do that.
Yeah, well, Dick's already looked into it.
We used it at this curves and kind of developed that recently with that, but obviously wanted to make sure the board was comfortable with that, and obviously authorized the supervisor to enter into that agreement.
Sure.
And so the driveway from, obviously from Shoecraft in is all private.
Yep.
And so we're looking at just the piece that is within the right-of-way on Shoecraft.
Yes, yep, they're doing some storm stuff just along the right-of-way in here, closing that up. They have their own private driveway that comes in the house. Water main connects out across the street. It's just a force main that comes down, runs along our right-of-way. Normally you'd have just a small piece where it ties in. Our utilities just don't go that far. So there's no other house here at this time. There's no other thing that we foresee to connect to that. So there's no reason for the town, one, to extend, a manhole up just for this, or for us to take ownership of that force main.
And there is no intent to at some point look to want to give this to the town.
That's part of the agreement. It basically says that it's private, it is yours.
Any problems?
The water
any issues?
authority calls for a stakeout. They've got to stake out their own line.
Yeah.
So that's part of the agreement, is to make it very clear and to run with the property that that'll be a filed document. Future homeowners will obviously inherit that as well.
Okay, great.
I would move to proceed with a resolution authorizing the supervisor to sign the agreement.
I have a second.
Okay, so it's moved and seconded, and then we'll use the standard language that we used for the curbs. We've got that pretty much in place. That's been reviewed and approved by Mr. Horowitz, and we'll do the same for that as well. Okay, seeing no further comments, discussion? Those in favor, aye. Opposed? All right. We're gonna throw one more curve at you, Mr. Valentine. We've got one more item before we get to that.
That gave me a better agenda.
Okay, very good. So our next item is tree preservation guidelines, and Councilwoman Metzler, being our liaison to the Conservation Board, had asked that we put this on as a result of the last meeting for just general discussion. So.
Thank you. The Conservation Board has had, as Supervisor said, a couple general brief discussions regarding the tree preservation guidelines. Certainly they see the value in the town having them, and the fact that so much work was put into the tree preservation guidelines. Their concern that they've raised on several applications that they've looked at is to what extent are the tree preservation guidelines being directly provided to developers? Is there some way to make sure that they're receiving them? And then also the Conservation Board would like the developers to somehow be held accountable on what the tree preservation guidelines state and whether they can or cannot adhere to those guidelines. So something along the lines of, I guess, two requests. The first is they're requesting that the town board direct staff to include the guidelines as part of the application package that's given to applicants and developers. And secondly, to follow up in some way, in writing or as part of a checklist or some way for the developers or applicants to state, yes, we are going to adhere to them. No, we cannot. The Conservation Board certainly understands that there are guidelines, that it's not something that we can, that we can mandate as condition, but their concern has been kind of swelling as far as, we should make better use of the guidelines consistently with the projects. So I offered to bring it to the town board as a work session for a discussion.
Okay. Planning staff,
I mean, it's
questions,
something
concerns?
we can definitely provide. Just a point of clarification, this is not an adopted policy by the town board, correct? This is a tree preservation policy of the Conservation Board, and that's, I think, some of the issue we run into is in enforcement. It's not the sidewalk
Right.
policy, which is an
Yeah.
adopted policy of the town board and of the town, which gives us more level of enforcement. This is a guideline of the Conservation Board, and we can definitely provide it to applicants as they come in. Our issue falls on the enforcement part of it. If they say, no thanks, we'd rather not, it's not an adopted policy of the town board
Right, and I
of
think
the
they
town. So
understand
that's
that.
where we
They
kind of run into a
understand
little bit
that-
more of the
that-
enforcement end of things, and how do you push a developer to really
It's
comply
not
or
a requirement, but I think their concern is that it seems to be not being utilized. And maybe they're not, and maybe I'm not aware of, to what extent the tree preservation guidelines are utilized. When an applicant comes in, do they receive a copy of them? How do they have to ask for it? How do they find out about them? How do they, even know what the guidelines are? And so I think that they certainly, understandably, the Conservation Board put a lot of work into developing it, and they want to see it, utilized in the best way possible, while understanding that they are guidelines by an advisory board.
It is handed out as more of an as-needed basis right now, based on the projects that come in. Recently, I'd say over the past 18 months or so, I haven't seen many projects that have truly required it. We use it, again, as a guideline for both board members and staff and developers as needed. But like
more,
Mark said,
more redevelopment projects.
more
as of
redevelopment
late.
or
So
a
is there
site
some
with no
criteria
significant
that's
trees on it.
used by staff as to whether those guidelines should be presented or not?
We look at the extent at which they're clearing, at the extent of how many significant trees are on there, what are the existing conditions now, and what warrants it, and then obviously what's the proposed use. Different projects, different uses, different zoning. It's obviously not always practical to keep every tree that's on there, but we always encourage to do some sort of tree replacement as part of a landscape design, as part of a buffer technique, whatever it may be, based on the plan. And that's why we've always used the Conservation Board when those type of projects come in that are going to require extensive clearing. Let's document what's out there. Let's work with the developer, get the comments to them to try and say, we have this tree, can we preserve it, can we move it, or can we replace in kind throughout the process. And when I was serving with the Conservation Board as the staff liaison, that's a lot of the stuff that we saw during those years. Lately, it's like Mark said, it's been more redevelopment projects where, in all honesty, it hasn't come up a lot, with the exception of a few things recently. But that's when our trigger is to say, here they are, to the developer, please be aware of these as we start to move forward.
I would assume that if it was, hypothetically, if it was policy, similar to the sidewalk policy, then it would require waivers by the board every time
Well, and
there was a reason why the developer wasn't going to adhere to.
Very specific based on the size of the tree. Obviously, you can't plant a 24-inch or 36-inch diameter tree, then there's a subsequent number you need to replant. And dependent upon the development, there may not be room on the site. I know we had at least some initial conversations with the supervisor is we may need to look at designated areas in town parks or other areas that if we're telling a developer, hey, you've cleared this amount of woods, but now you've got to replant 50 trees, 100 trees, it may not fit on their site. So I think, as part of that discussion or going forward, if we're looking to, push this more, we may have to designate some areas in town properties or other locations that we say, okay, you can put the 50 trees over here. We know they physically won't fit on, whatever site, especially if it's a commercial site. May have a large extent of, impervious area, which, in a general business district you would expect. But the tree clearing, you always have a landscape plan, you always put stuff back, but you may not specifically meet the requirements of, you need to put 50 trees back in at such caliber. You may need to give them a designated location to do some revegetation or reforestation, if that's the direction we want to
Would
move.
it be appropriate to ask staff to do a memo to the conservation board, basically synopsizing what you said? As far I certainly can paraphrase for them, but to give them something from staff that reassures them, this is how we're utilizing tree preservation guidelines. There's some discretion involved, but with every application in which trees may be impacted, that staff certainly looks at as a possible need to distribute to a developer. I just think I think it might just be a disconnect where the board thinks it's not being used, and in fact it is, but I think it needs to be somehow formally communicated back to them.
Sounds fair.
Because I certainly think and Zach, you may recall, I think on the applications that they review, certainly that's one of the things that they're thinking about is in their own practice is tree preservation, whether they're, have a policy in their hands or not. So if just, a couple paragraph synopsis, even, maybe via email, maybe Doug can do it, since he's the representative from staff.
We can generate it, distribute it,
Yeah.
and if someone needs to be there to discuss it further,
Yeah,
we're both available,
that
so.
would be helpful.
And we will have some projects coming up, as we've been talking to Mr. Summers and some others, where there will be tree removal that will be
Yeah.
somewhat significant. So it will play into that, no
Yeah.
question.
So I don't want to drag this out, but what if we were to give these guys an opportunity over the next couple of weeks to kind of put something together, get a chance to just push it back to us so we could take a look at it before it went to the conservation board, and then we could take our final action on the 24th. And that way we're all comfortable with where we are with that. So. All right, so I'd entertain maybe a motion to table and hold until the 24th, and then between now and then, let's take a look at what those couple of paragraphs might be to make sure we're all...
I'll move.
Okay.
A second.
Thank you.
Yep, absolutely. So it's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? All right. Okay. Seeing none, I'd ask for a roll call vote. I'd ask those in favor, aye. Opposed? Okay. Thank you. Thanks, guys, and we'll get that for some broader conversation.
Sorry I have to leave you during the presentation. I gotta go be a coach, but I'm entrusting it to these two. Kaz and I had a magical journey out there and taking beautiful pictures. I hope you enjoy them all.
I hope it was Friday.
It was cold. It was
We gotta
cold.
speculate what a magical journey.
The leaves right up against the tree.
Thank you, Coach.
We normally wouldn't do this, but it was a pretty dreary day, and the pictures didn't come out as well as we had hoped, so we thought maybe they'd be better if you could see them on a computer versus
You get to do them again.
looking through it, yeah. So just to recap, back on September 6th, you conducted a public...
And so just for the
Oh,
record,
sorry,
guys, this is
for
for Bayview Landing Subdivision 1185 Empire Boulevard.
That's right.
So, okay.
And actually, I talked to Dr. Howitt yesterday. He could not be with us tonight. He's in Naples, Florida, enjoying 72-degree weather, so he sends his best. In any event, Dr. Howitt, let's go back a second. Back in September 6th, you conducted a public informational meeting, talked about the concept of what he's proposing for the site. After that meeting, you determined to be appropriate, based on some of the comments the neighbors made with vision and noise and lighting and all that business, to wait until the leaves came down off the trees so that we could get a better look at really what was happening during the winter months, since winter months are generally 7-8 months a year here. So we did that, and we held off until December 11th. On that day, Zach, Dr. Howitt, and myself walked the entire property that he has, both where the proposed apartments are going to be proposed to be constructed, and also up the hill along the old road to Pecora's old property at the top of the hill on Woodhaven. We took photographs all the way up, and I'll go back to the photographs in a few minutes. We then went over to Woodside Drive and then crossed over into Old Westfall Road. Took photographs at various locations all the way to the end of Old Westfall Road, even out to the property that Dr. Howitt owns there, that he is proposing to turn over to the County of Monroe to extend the park area. So going back to the photographs, we could do that. This photograph, I'm sorry, that photograph, one of the nexuses of all these photographs is this hydrant here. That hydrant was identified on your,
This hydrant right here.
it's that hydrant right there.
Just
So-
to give you an orientation as you're looking at the pictures of kind of keeping your bearings.
So that hydrant, right on that line, is pretty close to the end of the project. It's going to encroach a little bit more into that area, but not much more than that. So that's the reference point. So we went out and we started taking photographs, and we are looking now towards the K2 property, which is right there. So all this area between the hydrant and K2 is the area that would be proposed to be developed. It's very confining. There is a steep slope right behind this area. I did talk to Dr. Howard. He talked about the possibility, after meeting with you, of possibly increasing the number of units to see if he could pay out some of the improvements that he's going to have to do, possibly with road improvements and right-of-way improvements to Empire Boulevard for safety purposes. He said he couldn't do it. He said there's just no way, there's not enough room, he doesn't want to jam stuff on the site, so he's staying where he was. So then we started walking up the hill, and that box is 24 Old Westfall Road. That is the only house that has any view or vision towards this project. And it actually does face out a little bit towards the project, but it faces out more towards the east. They're probably looking more towards the Melly property than they are down here, but they can certainly see this out of their side windows. So, but you do see, there's a lot of tree coverage there. There are no leaves on the trees, and it still is somewhat obstructed, but you could certainly see something down the hill if you were looking, especially during the winter months. So we go up the hill, we're walking along, there's still
That's looking south.
it's still looking south, and that's still 24. Now we're kind of up, almost all the way up to the hill, right before you get to the old Pecora property.
Towards the
And
bay.
it's hard to see it, but there are several pine trees right where his hand is. Some of those pine trees to the left are going to be taken out because they need to utilize that area. The pine trees to the right will stay intact if he has his way. Coming up, we are now almost to the very top. We're right before that chain that's over there by the properties that enters into Old Westfall Road, or into Woodhaven Drive. You can look down. It's becoming more and more remote as you look down the hill. I actually thought at one time that Ralph Melio and even the family that bought the Pecora property would have vision of the proposed development, and I don't think they do.
It's
I don't think they could.
around this corner here.
Yeah, you're kind of going around the corner now. You can't really see anything. Continuing northward or southward, here's the gate. We are way beyond now. You can see down where
Right there's the vehicle.
yeah, but way down the hill now, you can even barely see it. There's that little white spot where the snow is just below your hand there. Now, further over, yeah, that's kind of where it would poke out a little bit if it did. Now we're going around. We are now in the backyards of 24 Old Westfall. That's the one house that could look down and see it. It's right there. And what happens is it kind of falls off a little bit gently, and then it drops off. So you would have to go way out to the edge of that slope area to be able to look over and then look down to actually physically see any development on the area where he's proposing it. This is back now. We are back to the K2 Brewery, and we're now looking south again towards, up on the hill there would have been 24. This is the area of actual development for the site. And you can see how constrained it is. Yeah, those pine trees are there. You can see how constrained it is because it starts to climb pretty quickly to the west, which does not leave him a lot of room, and he does not want to encroach into that slope area. So that's pretty much it. I did ask Jess Sudol to give you a recap on the potential architecture for the site, proposed location of where they were looking to do this. And we also, Zach and I prepared a map that identified our recommendation that if you were to pursue this with Dr. Howitt, that in that shaded red area, we would like to see that area brought into compliance with the code for the district if we're going to do it. We did do some calculations. That area in red is about 6.05 acres, but you see that there's a wetland that was superimposed on it. That wetland is about 3 acres, a little more than 3 acres. So in essence, the usable amount of property that would come out of the rezoning would be 2.44 acres. And that includes the old 50 Wilbur Tract Road, which was a trucking company. Even portions of that parking lot that are out there are in a wetland. They've been there forever, so obviously they're probably exempt from the wetland requirement, but they could not expand that area further into the wetlands if they wanted to. But that would bring their property into compliance with the LLD requirements. It would bring 50 Wilbur Tract Road now into compliance, and it's no longer a pre-existing non-conforming use. And it may make it more marketable for some usable function other than what's been in the past. Everything that's been in there has been a pre-existing non-conforming use, so that's kind of where we are right now.
So still playing.
No, actually, the apartment proposal would fall under your purview for a couple of reasons. Number one, they would need a rezoning if you saw fit to move forward with it. And secondly, the entire property would then be in the LLDD zoning, which you have total jurisdiction over.
Well,
But we have to rezone it first to make sure.
the property would...
Well, you wouldn't rezone it if you didn't think it was appropriate to move forward on the
This
application.
is the LLD district, so Jamie, we were talking about 50 and
Right.
on the corner of this.
Bringing it over to get it into compliance.
And those are just for the apartments.
Right,
So-
that's right.
The parking
Apartment
lot.
building 1, apartment building 2.
Well, it would incorporate the parking lots as well. It would take everything into account and bring it into compliance.
Will it be a joint public hearing with planning board? Because
No,
we
not
have
really,
interest?
because the planning board has already had the public hearing on the 33 units. That is a tabled matter. It's been tabled for quite a while, and they're waiting for some information to finalize it, which Dr. Howard has held off on, pending a discussion with you on this proposal. Because this proposal kind of provides some additional funding to build the improvements that we need on Empire Boulevard and some other things that he would have to do. Wilbur Tract Road needs to be reconstructed as a condition of site plan approval for the 33 units. They're going to have to do some things to accommodate the families that live back there as well to their property line to make it safer for them to get out. So he's got a lot of expenses that we're incurring on him as a condition of site plan approval for the 33 units. He's wrestling with that right now, but he thinks that he could overcome that with the apartment complex to take care of all the needs that we have for approval.
And we would make conditions as well.
Oh, absolutely. Well,
So if
this board,
passes it down.
well, I've been working with this board. You've never approved something unless you knew what the project was going to be.
Yeah.
You have to know that. You have to be comfortable with the project. If you're not comfortable with it, there's no sense in moving forward on a rezoning. If you're comfortable with it enough to the point where you have site plan review on it, and you might even have a conceptual site plan review just to make sure you are comfortable on it before you move forward on a rezoning. You could do it one way or the other. You're certainly not going to be able to grant site plan approval until it's properly zoned.
Right.
But you could have a conceptual review of it and determine if things need to be done to make you more satisfied with the project. And then as a condition, you would move forward, do the rezoning, and then grant approval in the final format. Or, if you're not interested in it, you can walk away from it. You're not obligated to rezone the property.
So those are the two options, just walk away from it or do a conceptual. Because you would.
Recognizing that if you're going to do a conceptual, it's with the intent of rezoning the property if you're satisfied with the conceptual. It's kind of scary for a developer to have to go through the cost of engineering and everything else if they're not going to be somewhat satisfied they're going to get an approval. So, you're playing both sides on that.
This is one of these soap time moments. I don't know if we're ready to make a decision. I don't know. I just-
So we held an informal neighborhood discussion meeting in August, and that was to take a look at what was being proposed, 2 buildings, 36 units in total. The piece that came up was the fact that a portion of the apartments fell into the district that we just described, or was described by staff, at roughly 6 acres that they're looking to at least put on the table for some discussions in and around rezoning. We did have a handful of folks that did come in to address the board overall. I think some, as I was reading my notes over earlier today, I think some folks didn't fully understand that the townhouse project was near completion by way of a decision by the planning board. And the only reason that the planning board hasn't made that final decision is because of the request from Dr. Howitt for those additional units. It was kind of putting them together. We had a couple of folks that were in fact very favorable, Ralph Melio being one, read a statement in, and a couple of folks had some concerns about general topo, but the big piece was what do you see with leaves or no leaves, and that was Chris Coven at 24 Old Westfall Road. One wasn't happy with the plan, and two wanted to know what things look like with leaves or leaves off, leaves on, leaves off. And that was kind of why we had tabled it up to this point, to give staff an opportunity to take a look at that. So,
Now we've seen it, and we see
No.
it doesn't have a big impact visually.
we have the one home, the 24, that, as the photos show, they may have, at least in the no-leaf scenario, may be able to see some of the project.
Yeah, Tony, that's a good point, and I think one thing you might want to look at, not to spend the money, but certainly 24 will be able to see something. I'm not quite sure yet what, but it might be advantageous if we were to ask, see if they would possibly do a profile from his yard or his house to see what you would really see based on the topography down. He might only see rooftops. He might see maybe the third floor or something like that. I'm not quite sure. I just know that when we looked up, we saw his house. His house is angled towards that area somewhat. So he certainly has, a valid concern if that's his issue. And, you know, we should address it if we can and at least know what the issue really could be based on a profile looking down on the site.
And then the question about the rezoning, is there any concerns about spot zoning in this particular case?
Not in this case, because it abuts the current LLDD district. I mean, you are actually adding on to it. If it were standing out by itself in the middle of nowhere, certainly that would be spot zoning, and that's not the case here. Truth be told, we probably should have done 50 Wilbur Tract Road when we first created the district, and I certainly don't remember why we didn't, but it's been nothing but a headache, and there's nobody down there now. It's been a headache for us administratively because everybody's coming in trying to use it for things that are just not appropriate for that area. If we can get it into a proper district, then we can have people start to look at it in a different light and maybe utilize it for something more positive. Especially if anything happens down there.
What's the condition of the building that's there today?
It's actually not in bad shape. It's in fairly good shape. The parking area is in pretty bad shape. It hasn't been maintained, and as I say, a lot of it's actually in a floodplain. Or I'm sorry, it is in a floodplain, but it's also in a wetland and a wetland buffer area. So.
Okay, so staff had put on the table or suggested that possibly getting a profile from the engineer just to see what 24 might be viewing or looking at as, as part of that, regardless, leaves on, leaves off. Thoughts about pursuing that?
I like that because our guys went out and did this, and as a result, they discovered that this one home could see they could see this one home.
Yeah, if you look at Mark's
So this is
got it
the
up.
next level, it's like, hey, this is what we got for you.
Mark has the aerial for that neighborhood, and you can see 20. That's 24 right there. And he is angled down now. He's not as angled. He's not angling to the north, but I suspect on the side of his house, if he looked out, he could probably see something. But you start looking south on these lots, and you see how they're angled. This one's angled now further to the southeast. The next one is angled southeast. This one is southeast. This one here is starting to go northeast. But they're so far away from it now, they're not going to be able to actually see those two buildings.
Right.
That's not to say they won't see the 33 townhouses that are there, because they all will. But if you're looking at the issue from what you're having to deal with administratively, they will not, other than 24, none of them will probably see those units.
This knoll here is the part you were sharing before in these pines. The building would be up in this area
it's in
here.
that area.
So this knoll here kind of prohibits view from anybody along this edge, and then potentially even this edge. You're trying to look around.
You just can't see it.
Look around that corner, and the building would be over here, and then the other building would be up
But
in here.
the building itself is all in the LaSalle Landing.
I believe
based on-
a
A
portion
little bit of it that isn't.
portion of it
So
would be in this.
obviously then this isn't,
No, I wouldn't go by that. We noted when we saw the site plan that they brought in, there was just a very small portion of the structure,
They were shown.
and then a portion of the parking lot that was beyond the
From
structure.
the end of the
would-
building,
would
just
not have been in that
just
district.
over here, and then the parking would be down in this area here,
Right.
which would be in the residential zoning district.
And we've asked them to look at things like night sky compliant to make sure that things are downward and not shooting up the hill and that type of thing.
Mark, remind the board, if you would, when Dr. Howard was in for the 33 townhomes, what was the input feedback from neighbors, residents during that time?
Obviously, we've been looking at this property for many years. Originally, it was Mr. Costello. There was a lot of concern from residents at that point. Dr. Howard, I think, did a good job of reaching out to the neighbors, sharing with him his vision, meeting with the neighbors on that. I think the biggest concern, came down to, traffic. He's looking at, improvements to the road. There was some drainage concerns in Wilbur Tract. I think we've been working with the Wilbur Tract neighbors, and I think we've, helped them out with some of the situations that were going on. There were some blockages up along here from beavers that were, outside of their property, but obviously was affecting up through the wetlands. So I think we've done some betterment of that. There's also been some concerns over that connection into their neighborhood from down below. I think, or hopefully we've done a better job explaining that would be emergency egress, ingress only. There would be a chain across it. Dr. Howitt, is supportive of that as well. He's not looking for a thoroughfare through his property. He's looking to have townhouses, not looking for a connection from Empire Boulevard to Browncroft. And I think that's been a concern of the neighbors of, opening that up and making that a connection through. It's merely a need of the fire departments if something happened and a tree fell. As we nearly had last year, a tree fell across, and the only thing got people out was going through Miss Rita's parking lot. Otherwise, that would have been blocked, and people would have no access to get out to work to get in and out as a tree fell on a power line. So this would be the only alternative to get out of that neighborhood. Temporarily, you could remove the chain, people could get out, the tree would be removed. It would be closed right back up again, so it would not stay open as an alternative access. So at this point, the planning board, as Jim had shared, he's got some geotechnical stuff to provide for basements and everything else, the foundations of it, as well as some final wetland delineation down the bottom. But if the project wasn't going to move forward, obviously that's an additional cost for him. So the planning board just had it tabled. Actually, it was a 2016 public hearing. He's asked for them to continue table it. We'd have to do some communication back with the public, if he comes back with new information and share that, if they got some new stuff, and it has been continued tabled from that point. It's been an active thing on the agenda, so it's been on there every month for the planning board. So it's hasn't gone away. But then now he's looking at doing the apartment units, which would be down in the sales area, would be a separate application before the town board.
So I'm hearing the board leaning towards tabling for another couple of weeks to get that profile for that, and then bring it back for discussion about one, the potential for rezoning, that 6 acres, and including that as part of the LaSalle's Landing District, and then the potential of moving forward or not for the apartment piece.
Right,
Yes.
conceptual hearing.
Okay, someone like to make that motion?
I'll move.
Moved by Andy, seconded by?
I was like,
Okay, Rob, thank you. And we'll look to get that additional information. Okay, that brings us to the end of our agenda, and if there's nothing more to come before the board, the work session for January 10th will stand adjourned at 8:37 p.m.